everybody. We'll get the formalities going here. And I just want to introduce myself. My name is Josh Erickson, and I am the moderator of the board of the Presbyterian Church USA Church Growth Network. My call is in Presbytery, Chicago, Park Ridge Presbyterian Church. And I've been here for 11 years and have all the gray hair to prove that as the senior pastor as well. And so excited to have this webinar today. And I'll introduce our presenter in just a second here. And we're just excited that everybody's a part of this webinar today. And hopefully we can all learn more about audio, video, and lighting and why it matters. And I don't think probably we have to convince you that it matters, but we're probably looking at a group of people who are trying to do what we're doing better. And we're here to help each other learn about that. Want to make mention while we're getting going here and making sure we give people time to hop on that the PCUSA Growth Network, we have two monthly Zoom calls where one's on the second Tuesday and one's on the second Wednesday. And you can drop in on those, and it's a great chance to get to know people. And there's somebody new on those calls every month. We also have these webinars. And this coming October 5th, 6th, and 7th, we're going to have our second annual conference. And it's going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio. So save the date for that. And we'll have more on that coming out in the short order. But Rich Hong, our presenter today, lead presenter, was our first host and did a fantastic job with that. But we're looking forward to our second annual as well. And so we are excited for that. We are going to get started now, and I will turn it over here to my friend Rich Hong. Rich Hong is the pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Englewood, New Jersey. And I don't know what else that Rich is going to say about his ministry, but what I'll tell you is that Rich was a software engineer before he became a pastor. He was a ruling elder before he became a pastor as well. And so Rich has held many roles of leadership within the church, and I appreciate that about him. Rich is in his church had a pretty traumatic experience a few years back when their sanctuary had a fire. And that led to a resurrection, a phoenix moment for his church, which I want to provide for context is one of the reasons why Rich was able to redesign his audio, video, and lighting to meet his very exacting standards. But all of that being said, maybe the most important thing about Rich, besides that he loves Jesus, is that he's a Chicago Cubs fan. So he knows how to endure long-term suffering, which probably equipped him to be a good Presbyterian minister. Pretty much. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rich, and he'll lead us through his presentation, and I'll monitor the chat and chime in as needed. So, Rich, thanks for leading us today.
Okay, great. Thanks. But first of all, just want to let you know it's going to be a very short, very basic level presentation. A bunch of pictures of our space and setup where we can talk about some of the considerations that went into designing things the way we did. And other than that, I really am counting on the rest of you to come up with questions. But given that I just didn't know where everyone was coming from. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are real experts at this stuff, and you're coming for higher level discussion, and you just want to talk nerd to nerd, and I love nerd on nerd discussions, so that's great. Some of you could be coming from a very basic level and just want an introduction, and that's fine too. By the way, I'll just let you know that there's a piece of software. It's not terribly expensive. It's like $79 a year called ManyCam. And that's actually what I'm using right now. That's allowing me to inset my webcam picture alongside a PowerPoint presentation. And so that's what's feeding. So ManyCam is literally my Zoom camera for leading presentations like that. And that's why I'm actually able to have a cropped in image of my webcam astride a PowerPoint presentation that I'm giving. So if you're wondering how I managed to get a PowerPoint slide next to my picture and my picture isn't full screen within the Zoom window, it's with this ManyCam software. That's like I said, I think it's like $79 a year or something like that. It's not a bankrupting amount of money. So we're going to get started. And like I said, it's at a very, very basic level. And when we talk about audio, video, and lighting, we remember, worship is primarily something we listen to. Okay. If you can't hear worship, um, if you can't hear worship, then it's not going to be, possible, right? I mean, if you tried to make a silent movie of worship, it would be completely, unwatchable at any form. So, in terms of priorities, I put audio first. And then I put lighting second because if bad lighting just makes everything look horrible. And video is actually, aside from a couple of fundamental principles of using video to increase engagement, mistakes in video are the most forgiving. And so if your video is off on the wrong person or in the wrong place, you can actually forgive that because you can still hear what's going on. So, for example, on Sunday morning, when we've got a person operating lyric slides and a person operating cameras, the lyric slide, which is the simplest thing to do, just push next lyric, next lyric, next lyric, is actually the least forgiving in terms of mistakes. Because if the wrong lyric is on screen, people can't sing. Okay, so that messes up people's participation much more than if the camera is in the wrong place. Okay, so it's actually the most forgiving, even though it can be the most complicated skill to teach. It's also the one that is the most forgiving in terms of mistakes. Okay, now, audio. A lot of you have had this issue of trying to deal with live stream, audio sound. And the main thing to remember is that audio is where you have this huge differential between what you can hear in the space and online. And the very basic principle you need to remember is that if it doesn't have a microphone, it can't be heard online. And so so it's just a matter of understanding that anything that is simply acoustic in the space, you've got to figure out how to add that to your online experience. All right. And it's pretty difficult to replicate in space acoustics online. So it's kind of its own thing, having something that sounds good online. It's going to be different from how it is in our spaces. This is especially true in traditional worship spaces because if you look at the big mega churches, they're built as theatrical black boxes, and they're very dead rooms. But traditional worship spaces were originally designed for not even amplification if your space is old, and they were designed for instruments like pipe organs, which depend on reverberance in the room. See, the pipe organ is one of the most interesting instruments because you'll all, in all your spaces, right, your organ pipes are very high because the whole idea of the way a pipe organ works is it throws the sound over your heads and then it bounces around in the room and then melds together at your ear. Nothing else is listened to that way. Everything else is more or less meant to be listened with it coming directly from the source to your ear. Organs depend on spaces where the sound bounces around, and that bouncing sound is a nightmare for audio people. So it's really hard to get that balance right. And it's also where you find the greatest knowledge gap in volunteers. All right, because when you get volunteers, they normally know something about cameras and camera angles, even if they've never done it, they understand it because they can see it. Most people don't can't even hear bad audio. And it's proven by looking at what they're listening to audio on. Okay. And so when you see a person who's happy with a $5 set of earbuds and that's how they're listening to their music, you understand they don't have an ear, right? Because that's good enough for them. It would be like trying to put a smoke filter in front of your TV and watch TV. You wouldn't stand for that but people literally do that all the time with their audio. And so people are actually not very discerning in audio, so it's difficult to teach that skill because they don't innately have it. Also, it's difficult for people to describe bad audio. The way you hear it is people go, well, I couldn't understand the person. Okay. They were speaking and it sounded, I just couldn't make out what they were saying. And what they don't understand is that often isn't an issue of diction. It can be, but it can also just be a problem with the way the audio is being mixed in the space, because you can really ruin audio pretty easily. Okay. So, live stream versus in-house, first thing you do is just imagine what you'd hear with the sound system off. If you took your sound system, turned it off, and sat in the space, would you hear nothing? No, you'd hear certain things, but not other things. You would hear a pipe organ at full blast. You would hear the preacher, but they would be very soft, all these kinds of things. Okay. So when you're in person, what you're hearing is a combination of the ambient sound, the stuff that you would hear, the natural sound with the sound system off, plus whatever is coming through the speakers. If you do what a lot of churches do and simply take that amplified sound that's coming through the speakers and feed it to the live stream, you're missing the rest of it. And so the trick of mixing for live stream is you are simply trying to add back for the online listener. You're trying to add back that natural sound that people sitting in the pews are hearing. Easier said than done, but that's the basic thing that you are trying to do. And this is why so many people will say, hey, it sounds so good in the space and it sounds so bad online. And what you're missing is that component of the sound that people would hear if your sound system was off. And that's what's missing. And that's what needs to be added back. Good so far? All right. Okay. So what are my tricks for trying to teach people to mix audio? Train yourself to hear bad. Okay. This is the easiest way to do is hear yourself, train your ears to hear bad. And the way you do that is you start playing with the controls like during a rehearsal. Call a special rehearsal, whatever it takes, and take the controls on your mixer and take them to the extremes. When you take them to the extremes, you turn like the bass all the way down, the high end all the way up, and you do these things, take everything to extremes, you will hear how bad it sounds. And eventually you will learn that that is what bad sounds like. Otherwise, what you're doing, and I think we've all done this, we've all taken our car to the mechanic and you tell the mechanic, my car is making a funny noise. And that helps your mechanic zero. All right. But your mechanic hears the noise and understands what's making that noise. Okay. As you can listen for bad by deliberately, if you can learn how to deliberately create bad with your audio mixer, you will eventually learn how to hear what's a little bit off and then make it good. So that's one of the easiest ways to do it, because if you have a trained audio person come in, I guarantee what will happen is they will tell you that your sound is off and they will make it better. And 75% of the people will not even perceive that it's different. 75% of the people will sit there and say, it doesn't really sound much different to me. It sounds a little bit different. Okay. Because the trained audio person can hear bad and can hone in on it. So train yourself to hear what is bad. And you can do that by taking controls to the extremes and understand that the default settings, the flat all the way across the board, they are not optimal. They're not optimal at all. All right. And so if you leave everything set the way it is when you take it out of the box, I guarantee your sound is not optimized to your space. And is there a right or a wrong? There just isn't. Okay. There's a combination of the nature of your room, and what you're basically trying to do is balance you're balancing the sound that you're putting out against the natural acoustics of your room. Everyone's room is different. And so you can't ever say to someone else in a different space, hey, how are you setting your EQ for your vocalists? How are you setting your EQ for your preacher? Okay. Well, those things are going to be completely different. Does your preacher have a higher pitched voice, a lower pitched voice? Are they louder or are they softer? What's your room like? Where are your speakers located? And what kind of speakers are they? There's so many variables that it's going to be tailored to your space, and the default is not good. Now, very few rooms are flat EQ. The only way your room is offering a flat frequency response is if you built your room to do that. And almost none of us have done that. Okay, if you're building your space from scratch with an acoustic engineer, all right, then maybe you have a flat room. If you don't think you've ever played with EQ, have you ever touched the bass and treble controls on your car radio? Right? If you ever did that with your car radio, that's fundamental EQ. Okay. It's just that your bass control is your low range, your treble control is your high range, and it leaves your mid range right flat. And so if you take your bass and your treble and turn them both down, then by default, your mid range has been elevated relative to the other ranges. Okay. So you probably have played with the controls. Now, if you've always listened to music in your car without touching the bass and the treble, that's fine. But, try it. Just mess with that and hear the difference even in your car. Put on your favorite song and mess with the bass and treble controls and hear how differently the song sounds in your car. And you start to get an idea for how drastic the change can be in what a song sounds like. You may even find yourself, if you do that with one of your favorite songs in the car, hearing a background instrument that you didn't hear before because it got buried underneath the other frequencies. So you may hear a background violin or a background flute or the drums coming through differently because those are operating in very specific frequency ranges.
And let me just jump in real quick, Rich, to just say, if you are sensing there's a parallel between choir mixing voices, there's a parallel there. If you're sensing that this applies to music, it doesn't. It applies to spoken word. And Rich said that, but I want to highlight that real quickly, which is these principles apply to spoken word just as they do to amplified instruments or pre-recorded music. And I'll just use one of the classic examples is so in my church, we have myself and then an associate pastor. Our associate pastor is Amanda, a woman, and we have to EQ our two channels differently so that we're both intelligible differently to the congregation. Um, and and so that's a piece of this too, as well. And you can do a lot with this if you have the ability to change those settings on your sound system before you have to touch anything else in your room, like speakers or acoustical tuning. So there's a lot to do there that can be done if you have those controls. If you don't, then it's a longer journey to get there, but that's just a kind of a baseline.
But even the most rudimentary mixer, if you could have a Radio Shack mixer from the 80s and you've got fundamental EQ on there, you've got fundamental high, mid, and low range on that, and you can mess with that. A critical range that's very different between speaking and singing is that mid range right here, like in that 200 to 300 hertz range. It's both a mud zone and a warmth zone. Okay, you can get a lot of warmth and power in a singer's voice by boosting it a little bit, but you can also get a lot of mud in it. Okay, and so we give it a small cut, a small reduction for speakers, and we actually give it a bit of a boost for vocalists. All right, so we boost that range for vocalists. We cut a little bit. In fact, we even set our mixer a little bit differently depending on who the lead singer is on a song. So the lead singer will get a little bit of a mid-range boost, and then our background vocalists will get a little bit of a mid-range cut. Okay, but this is all a matter of taste. It's just a matter of adjusting for it. We had a question in the chat. Does that mean that when we have multiple speakers and people making announcements, we need to adjust EQ for each? Ideally, that's what a full-time, if you have what's called an A1, a person manning the board constantly, yes, you can do that. I will say you can probably get away with a couple of presets. You don't have to be so precise, but like when Josh was saying that Amanda is his associate, a male speaking range is different from a typical female range. Okay. And if you were to basically just have a couple of presets and adjust it for, grossly one or the other, you may find that one works better with a particular person and another works better with a different person. May not be gendered because lots of guys have high voices, lots of women have deep voices, but it's a matter of understanding what frequency range they're operating in. And yes, ideally, you would adjust EQ. A lot has to do with how bad it is in the space. Okay. The more rapidly they speak, the clearer you need to be, okay, on it. So you need to worry about that. All right. Frankly, mic technique matters a lot. A lot of people have no idea where to hold a mic or where to put it relative to their mouth, or they somehow seem to think that a microphone works perfectly well when it's pointed at their forehead. All right. And that's going to cause more issues than anything else, is simply putting people on putting people behind in front of the mic with a little bit of training. Here's where you hold the mic, here's where you put the mic relative to your mouth. Okay. A little bit of training is really critical in that regard. And then they get nervous and forget. But you ever see the person who thinks that they speak through their navel because they drop the mic down to their gut? You know, and they don't understand that the microphone is not sucking sound in from everywhere. And I've sat at the volume controls when there's a guest presentation, and I'm constantly going up and down because the person keeps forgetting to keep their microphone in the same place. All right. And so it's difficult. But yes, adjusting to speakers, training them. Yeah, in an ideal world, that's what an active sound person is doing. We don't have one. Okay. Yes, Cindy says also know if your mic is omnidirectional or unidirectional. We have a mix. Yes, understanding the pickup pattern of your mic is important. All right. And if you don't know what those things mean, you can Google them. It's just a matter of the pickup pattern. Some microphones are really set to pick up in a very narrow angle from the mic. And so if the mic is pointed slightly off axis, it's not going to get the sound. You have other microphones that are designed to have a more all-encompassing pickup pattern. Okay. And so understanding that is going to be important to getting a good mix. Lighting. Cameras, the cheaper the camera, they don't do well in low light. Most cameras amplify colors fairly well. So a color that looks relatively muted in the room is often very much much starker online. So like we have some lights that are very pale blue. When you're in the space, you hardly notice that they're on, but on the live stream, they're very stark. Uplighting backgrounds is nice. If you've got a person in front of like a white wall or a dark, a plain wall, throwing some uplight on it can really do a wonderful bit for adding some texture to it. Contrast in your lighting helps people focus their attention. So most places are more theatrical in that they keep the lights over the audience, over the congregation a little bit lower, and they use brighter light on the platform, on the stage, or the chancel, or whatever it is that you call it. That contrast helps attention stay focused to the front, and so try to use a little bit of to use a little bit of contrast. We shift our lighting a lot during every worship service. So we'll bring the house lights higher during hymns because some people are trying to read a printed hymn and sing it. We take the house lights low during the sermon so that they're just focused up front, that kind of thing. And so using the lighting really can add a lot to the ambiance of the room and sort of signal what's going on in the room. And generally, you try and keep the audience darker than the stage. I mean, that's usually a basic principle of anywhere you go with lights. Okay. Video, wherever you put the camera, that's where your online viewer is sitting. So think of where you would sit a person, okay? And uh, if you only have one camera, a whip pan is where you're moving the camera quickly while it's online. So you're seeing the camera movement. So that's called a whip pan because you're panning the shot and giving the person whiplash while you're doing it. Okay. But even a whip pan is preferable to that static pigeon eye view that I see in a lot of churches. The lone camera up in the balcony that makes everyone look like ants. It's a very disengaging shot. All right. Whatever you do, try and get a tighter shot. And if you have to move the camera because you don't have a second camera to cut to, that's okay. Do it slowly if you can. Move it over. If you're late, that's fine. If you have to whip them, that's better than having a disengaged, distant shot. For example, this is a capture of a colleague's live stream. Somewhere down there is a preacher. All right. This is a hugely disengaging shot. I mean, you look at this and you can think of all the different ways in which this is not a great shot to show. It looks like no one's there, right? So we actually have a rule when we're not crowded, which is a lot of the time, no audience shots. Okay. We have no desire to show the world empty seats. Okay. It's not a good look. It's not what we want. Okay.
And
But this
I would just interject here, friends, real quickly. If this is all you can do, don't do it. This is worse than this is not a good look for you. And we can at another point we can talk about how to remedy this. We may get there, but also there are other online ministry options that can be much more engaging than this as well.
had a great question. What do you do with the camera during the passing of the peace, communion, or other group activities? First of all, we keep our passing of the peace as short as possible. We're at 15 seconds. Okay, we don't allow the meet and greet time. Okay, there are other things you can do. We've done several things at different points in time. One was at one point during the passing of the peace, we had a very short pre-recorded video message that we would cut into the middle, greeting people who were watching online. So that was one thing. Another thing you can try to do is just keep the camera focused on where you do have people. So keep it focused on a choir loft, which might have a bunch of people in it. Okay. Keep it focused on one person. What's the pastor doing? Switch to a shot of a beautiful stained glass window or something like that. Okay. And so try not to go wide. If you go tight, you can actually have something that's more engaging. All right. So go in tight on a person greeting another person. All right. And feature that. And that's really what I would do in order to cut that down. All right. Um, we are streaming. We have both a contemporary and a traditional service, and we are streaming for live viewers at both services. So we're running both services live every week. Video. Everyone in
Oh,
camera needs
hey,
to be aware.
real quick, Rich. Sorry. Bob, that's a great question also. One of the things you may want to consider is pulling down your live stream video when it's over and keeping just the sermon on there because research shows that's what people are going to find on after the fact is the sermon. Um, and that also could be a tactic if you are limited where you can put cameras, which I get that. You may have to, punch in or edit and post that later. So those are great questions.
Okay, so everyone in camera view needs to be aware that they are being watched at all times. Okay. When we after our fire, one of the things we did was we were worshiping in our gym. We got back in there 5 months after our fire, and we started live streaming from the gym. The reason why we did that, this was back in 2017. We started live streaming. We were live streaming in 2017. One of the reasons why I did this was because what I wanted was for the people to get practiced at it. Okay. In other words, as we were going to design a new worship space, I wanted us to use our time in the gym as an experimental time to try and learn how to use the equipment and try and refine it. In both the gym setting as well as in our new worship space, the choir sits behind me. And in the gym, we learned something which was interesting because a an online viewer sent me this screenshot during my sermon. You see one gentleman completely two of the two men behind me are asleep. Okay. And yeah, so we now vacate the choir loft. Loft, the choir they unload the choir loft into reserved seats in the congregation area after the anthem, which is before the service starts in our order of worship, so that the seats behind me are empty because we showed this picture to the choir and said, we will give you two choices. Either you vacate the choir loft after the anthem. Um, right. Yeah, Bob, there's a modesty panel in our new space. And you'll see that when you see pictures of our new space, there's a modesty panel. But we told them either we unload you from there or you must appear to be paying attention at all points. They chose unload. Okay. So that was their choice. So it's up to you. All right. A rule of IMAG, if you use that, that's where you're simultaneously putting the image of what's going on in the space on the screens in the space. The rule of IMAG is the person on screen needs to be larger than they are if you're looking at them directly. If your screens aren't large enough to do this, just don't do IMAG. Okay, never put an image on the screen of a person that's smaller than if they look directly at the person. Okay, so in our case, this is a picture of our new space. Those are 10.5 foot LED walls on each side. So you can see me standing in the middle on stage, and you can see how large I am on the screens. Okay, so we go IMAG because I'm bigger on the screen than I am if you look at me directly. All right, so that's one of your basic rules. This is just our equipment list. We're using an Allen and Heath SQ7 mixer. Our video mixer is a Blackmagic ATEM TV Studio 8. Our cameras are Canon. Terry, yes, we do use lower thirds. I'll show you that in just a minute. Our cameras are CRN 500s. Our camera controllers an RCP 100. We control our lights via light key. Our slides are controlled by ProPresenter. We're streaming through Livestream Studio, and we're setting a lot of commands in an automated manner using BOEM Network MIDI software, which is super cheap. It's like $30, but it creates a virtual MIDI connection over your network from computers to computers. All right. Our audio equipment for our band is we're using Shure SLX wireless mics. We did switch the capsules out to be Earthworks SR3117s because we like their little bit of a warmer sound. Our band in the contemporary, they're wearing Shure PSM 300 wireless IEM packs. The ears themselves, a lot of our musicians are professional musicians who own their own earpieces. If they don't, we buy them either Shure SE215s or KZ-ZSTs. The KZs are a wonderful budget IEM earpiece unit. You can get them for as low as $20, but they're dual driver and really good value. Our drum kit's a standard Pearl acoustic kit. Our keyboard's a Yamaha YC88, and I'm wearing a Countryman H6 dual ear, but I'm using the cardioid version because we were getting too much reverberance on the Omni version. It was coming back through my vocal mic, so I switched to a cardioid. All right, so that's what our space looks like when everything's off. We have not considered giving up live streams. I don't know when you're saying that larger churches are giving them. I haven't seen any of the huge churches that I follow that are non-Presbyterian doing that. In terms of computer equipment, Brian asked this question. We've got three different computers. One is a Mac because the lighting control software only runs on a Mac. We're doing two different PCs, one to run ProPresenter, one to run the Livestream Studio, which is the streaming software. I didn't want them both on one PC because I didn't want that PC getting bogged down. They both have DeckLink cards in them for the additional video outputs and inputs that are needed. Our entire wiring framework is SDI. And I strongly recommend that if you are putting wiring in, even if your equipment is HDMI, wire for SDI, which means running a coax cable instead of running HDMI cable. You will not regret in the long run setting up an SDI-based wiring infrastructure for your video. We actually only have two tech people at the contemporary and one at the traditional because the lyrics move so slowly. The traditional service just moves so slowly. You only do it with one. We're actually using a lot of automated controls. We're using ProPresenter macros to send MIDI commands to preset scenes for the lighting and the audio. So what happens is when we're in singing mode, it switches the audio board over to preset singing configuration. In fact, I even have presets in our audio board that we set every week. I should say I set every week because I'm the audio guy,
I was just
right?
gonna say, yeah, Rich, let's be honest, there's another audio video leader in all this, which is you.
Right,
And that's an important qualifier here,
right.
is that this is one of Rich's passions. And and also he's working at this. That being said, I will encourage anybody who is a solo pastor like Rich, that this is vital, to make sure you're doing enough audio, video, and lighting and media. It doesn't have to be Englewood. It doesn't have to be a big church, but there are minimums that are the expectations these days, as well. So you don't have to be rich, but you do have to be you with some of it. Um,
Now, in terms of the PCs, we're using PCs because I'm more of a Windows person, just because I was always a Microsoft person. If you're looking for specs, look for a gaming computer because essentially gaming computers have a really nice video card in them because they're designed for high-speed video, high-speed responsiveness. Gamers go crazy if there's any kind of latency in their system. So basically, if you went to a 15-year-old and said, "What's your dream gaming PC?" That's a perfect PC for running your AV, all right, because it's going to be a very graphics-oriented computer system. But learning to automate things is amazing. The ability to use MIDI commands to send commands from one device to another, it's a total game changer. Game changer. We would be at so many more people if we didn't have that. The other thing, and you'll see this when I go through the pictures, is we are using Stream Decks. So Stream Decks are these configurable devices with just preset buttons. And so you can turn a lot of operations into single button press operations with the Stream Decks. So this is what our space looks like lit up. So this is a view from the audio room. We have a lyric strip in the middle. So that's a lyric strip or a lyric banner is just a single row of panels for words to show up on between the two big screens. All right. You can see that there's backlighting behind the choir loft. Okay. And we're also using uplighting. So if you look toward the ceiling, we've got we built sconces around the side that are throwing uplights on the ceiling, and we change the colors on these things during the service. All right, and so you can create mood that way. This is what the screens look like, sort of during a preaching mode. So that was a sermon illustration from this Sunday. And again, you can see the uplit blue background behind the choir loft that's directly behind me. In the rear, this is something to talk about. Okay. Um, we have a pair of monitors in the back, not one. So the speaker from stage or the singers are looking at two monitors. One is reflecting what the congregation is seeing. So we have the audience screen on one side, and we have a stage display on the other side. So in this case, ProPresenter is configured so that the stage display is showing both the current lyric and the next lyric, so that if the timing is a little bit off, the singers are in sync. So the singers are trained to look at the current and next combination slide so they know what's coming up. I use this for preaching. I don't use a pulpit. I appear to be speaking without notes, but I'm completely speaking with notes. Okay. Because the way I have it set up is I can see what the congregation is seeing on the left side. Like I showed you, that was a sermon illustration from Sunday. And on the right side are my bullet points from which I'm preaching. For me, a typical sermon is about 15 to 19 slides, and my speaking notes are all bullet pointed on the right. And yes, I use a clicker. I'm clicking them myself because I don't trust my AV guys to do it. And because the timing isn't always right. Sometimes you want to build up to reveal the next slide, and sometimes you need the slide to come up before you talk about it. And so, yes, I have trust issues because I'm kind of a type A OCD, you name every dysfunction in that regard, and I kind of I'm the complete constellation of those dysfunctions, all built into one person. So I run the clicker myself so that the timing on the switch is exactly the way I want it to be. All right. And you'll notice on my notes slide, I always have at the bottom next. I've left myself a note for what's the next slide so that I know what I'm transitioning toward, because that's the toughest thing to remember while I'm preaching. Okay. But I really recommend the dual slides. Those are just spotlights that are ceiling mounted off one of our trusses. So we've got those there. That's a picture of our uplight sconces, which is so much starker when you take a picture with a camera versus what it looks like in the space. In the space, it looks very gentle, and on camera, it looks very stark. And that's one of the things you need to understand. Is that lighting and things that look good in the space may look really harsh on camera. All right. That's something TV show producers are always, wary of is how they're lighting for how things are being seen versus how they're being lit for people who are in the room. Again, we've got spotlights on the top, so way above the AV room, you've got spotlights there that are shining down on the congregation. This is a picture of our AV room. So that's the big picture of the AV room going left to right. Now, here's another recommendation. We did not do what a lot of places do and build in a fixed counter. because first of all, that fixed counter is going to be attached to the wall, and one of the things you usually need to do is get behind the equipment. And plus, stuff is at different heights. So what those are Husky construction tables. You can buy them from Home Depot. They're a series of 4 foot construction tables that are adjustable height. There's a hand crank on each one that can take the table up or down a few inches, and they're only a couple $100 each at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. Okay. And so we used, and they have wheels. So we used adjustable height construction tables rather than a fixed countertop. So it's easy to pull one out a few inches and get to equipment that it's behind. Um, they're in a separate space, but those windows open. Bob. So those are sliding windows that they can open. So what happens is that in the traditional service, they tend to open it so they can hear the organ and they can hear the choir and they get a sense of the ambient sound. That in the traditional space, they're typically mixing with the window shut, but it gives the people in the room the option. And we do have monitor speakers in the room that are on a separate mix so they can decide what they're listening to.
And friends, I'll just say, if we have time left, I will show you our tech, which may feel less intimidating than all of this.
And so a few quick looks. That's our SQ7 board, which I love. I'm totally a big, huge fan of the Allen and Heath worship lineup. That's our light key computer. So you have the lighting cues, and it's also running BitFocus Companion, which is like the MIDI hub. That's our ATEM. That's our video mixer, the ATEM Television Studio. All right. That's our camera controller, and you can see what they can see in terms of the live stream camera angles. We're using 3 different cameras plus the slide feed from ProPresenter. That's the ProPresenter control screen with the presentations for all the lyrics and stuff like that, and all these macros that are cool. Those are our stream decks, and those have single camera buttons. So you see the top row. The way they set it up was the top 3 rows, it's camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. So the red row is camera 1, the blue row is camera 2, the green row is camera 3, and it's labeled like left singer, right singer, drums, all that kind of stuff. So it's one button press to reposition the cameras zoomed in on where they're standing. That's our live stream. Um, no, we're only using 3 cameras, Josh. Okay. And then I'd love to have a roving camera. That would be my dream. Would be to add a roving camera. That's our live stream computer. So that's what's streaming out through Live Stream Studio, which is software provided by Vimeo, which is our streaming vendor. That's our cable storage. I'm just OCD about having everything be organized. So I use bicycle hooks in the storage room. Are the talent standing on marks? They're not on exact marks, but they know where they're supposed to stand. So we work with them in rehearsal, and so that the AV team arrives at rehearsal time, so that the AV team has to be there by 8 o'clock in the morning in order to work out what the cameras are going to look like, and also a feel for the song, because the person running the cameras wants to know who's got the next verse, or if there's a duet, who's singing what, and if they get the timing right, it's perfect. Um, that's our drum kit. That's one of our behind here, behind the row of seats. That's our choir loft. Behind the row of seats, those are light bars sitting behind the choir seats. Yes, Vimeo Live Stream Studio. It's free software if you're a Vimeo customer. And then the lighting bar sits behind and is throwing uplight onto the white wall behind the choir seats. And then let me see, one last picture. That's a broom storage rack from Amazon, and that's what we're using to hold our mic stands. So just get a broom storage rack. It's like 20 bucks or 15 bucks on Amazon. Screw it into the wall, and your mic stands can fit right into the broom spots. So that is my that's the presentation piece. And yeah, so I have So whatever, ooh, hold on, let me turn my camera back on. Um, Hold on a second. Oh, I might can't start it because don't worry, be right there in a second. Um, all right.
While Rich is getting going there, I'll just pop in real quickly. I will not take the time, kind of time Rich did because that was excellent. But real quickly, let me just show you a little more scalable um, tech. So this is my sanctuary. It is larger. We had to make different decisions. But to answer Brian's question and correlation, we do our video and audio through what we have one screen and that fits our room. Again, that the screen is larger than it looks, but we do one computer for our slides. We have a couple of wireless mics. We do our audio from an iPad. Um, we do our video switching through this Roland video switcher, and we don't live stream through this. That's a whole nother thing. We have a preview monitor so we can see, and then our lighting is brand new to us. We got this about a year ago. It is controlled through an iPad, and then just to show you, we have problems. Our uh, camera controller doesn't like our camera. We just got this set up, and so we can't use the presets here. But I'll also tell you this is where we're going last into it. And then we do have a drum that's acoustic and we don't play very loud. And there's our confidence monitor. And we have something for the choir too, so they can see. But they only get to see current on there as well. And we'll break this down. But just so what it's worth, this took me 11 years to get to this point. Um, and it's not all neat and tidy all the time. But the way that we do this is all of our stuff is in a closet, actually the sacristy, um, as well. And I have some type A audio people too, Rich, and they do a decent job. I'm the one who makes the mess in there. So I just wanted to share a quick down and dirty on what we're doing, and because I think it is more translatable to more churches. Rich is doing an excellent job. Rich's tech is the equivalent to the first 300 seats or 200 seats of a megachurch auditorium. And what I would say is instead of having camera operators, they have their back wall where they have their PTZ cameras located in the optimal positions for all that as well. Um, all right, let's open it up to questions that people have. Yeah, Brian.
Uh, Richard, I'm putting you on the spot, but do you mind sending me your email so that I can just talk to you sometime at your convenience, and I'm happy to send you a gift card of your choice
No, I
to
do
have
not
a
want a
more.
gift card. I'm putting my email in the chat. I love talking about it. Talking about tech is my own reward.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will do
Rich,
something, but
yeah.
if you have that, I'll contact you for a separate conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Serious, honestly, my whole goal, I mean, I'm really passionate about trying to move the church forward. Okay. And so that is really the thing. And I have more fun talking tech than theology. So do not call me with a theological question. I'm not really interested. That's an exaggeration, but I won't have as much fun as if we're talking tech.
And I'll just
Guess you
plug
can
that.
blend the two together.
Yeah, he's helped me a bunch. And one particular time we Zoomed, and that was really great because it was live. And he was able to troubleshoot a problem with me from New Jersey to Chicago, that pointed me in the direction that I was then able to solve. But without his insight, I would have missed the problem. As well. All right, what other questions do we have? Yeah, David.
Yeah, thanks again, Rich. This is amazing. So, can you talk the difference between doing kind of Vimeo as your live streaming versus um, some other platform, and like right now we're just doing like a YouTube kind of a page, and we need to do better. I just don't know anything about that side of things.
Yeah, it's always going to be different in terms of what you want. In other words, one of the things with Vimeo was simply that we started with them because they gave us they had a good price, we started with live stream before Vimeo bought them. So we were a live stream customer, and then Vimeo purchased live stream. And the main thing that we wanted was to not pay a huge amount of money. There were people who wanted thousands and thousands of dollars, and all of the free options didn't include perpetual storage of the videos that people could access after the service and replay at will. Okay, so that was what we wanted, was for the ability for people to access any past service online without charging us extra for storing the videos, or us having to figure out a post live stream storage solution. All right. So right now, what we're paying for Vimeo, and they keep trying to get us to upgrade to the next level, which we do not need, is we're paying $900 a year. So, it's less than $20 a week. It's really less than $10 a service is what we're paying. But it includes the long-term storage of all of our services. So you can go on there and you can get all of that. A couple questions here. Oh, Cindy, yeah, I get it. Everyone, so many 25-year-old light and sound systems cobbled on. Yeah, that's what you got to do. It's a matter of trying to think through an upgrade path, and do one piece here, one piece there. But yeah, you got to do what you got to do, and you got to work with what you got to work with. I mean, and that's what happens. It's just looking for what's my upgrade path and how can we move at it. It's very modular, so you can start to move at this piece by piece. For editing, we're actually using, because you can get it so cheap through TechSoup, we're using the Premiere Elements, Adobe Premiere Elements, which is very cheap. It's I forget, on TechSoup it's like $35 or something like that, $40, somewhere around there. And that's what we're using for our video editing when we have to do editing. But actually, for a lot of simple editing, you can actually do amazing amounts of simple editing, like on Canva. And I hope you all have Canva Pro accounts for nonprofits. Canva for nonprofits is free. Okay. And you can do a reasonable amount of video editing on there. So for fairly simple stuff, like every week our family ministries director creates an announcement reel where she's just speaking into a camera, and all she's doing is in cutting pictures of her announcement slides in between her speaking about what she's announcing. And she does that on Canva.
What other questions does anybody have for Rich? Yeah, Barbara?
I work for a presbytery, not a congregation, and we just spent $5,000 to do a camera, 3 microphones, and a lighting system that travels from place to place to place. And I'm getting to learn all of it from scratch.
Awesome.
Yay. So when you are learning stuff, where is the best place to get the videos? Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh.
Where's the best place? Is there somebody you love to watch that gives you really good instruction? Is there somebody who I should just not even go there because it's too complicated? Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a few different things that are interesting. A lot of them are going to be higher level than you need. For specific pieces of equipment, YouTube is amazing. You can learn so much through watching YouTube videos, okay? The main thing is to actually set up the system and play with it. Set up YouTube videos. Don't play with it the morning you've taken your system to a presbytery meeting. Play with it in between, okay? And just mess with it. There's very little you can do that uh, that that will destroy the equipment. It's software. You're turning knobs and stuff. Okay, turn the knobs, mess with the knobs. Remember where they were. Take a picture of where they were before you started messing with them, then mess with them, and that's how you learn. There are some YouTube sites that are interesting that I like. Let me see. I'm going to find one here. I'll put one on if I can share my screen. Um, the see YouTube and so here, let me get in. Let me see if I'm on. I think what it's going to take to get there. Okay, so this guy, I'll share my screen here. This guy runs a really interesting YouTube channel, and it's called Budget Church Live Streaming. Okay, and he's got a lot of interesting videos, and obviously coming out of the evangelical world. Okay. But he reviews a lot of lower end equipment, reviews a lot of lower end stuff, and talks about whether it's good or not. Okay. And so, yeah, I like this guy. So he's really good. There is this whole, I think one of the things that, so it's Budget Church live streaming. Hopefully you got that. Maybe I'll put that link in the chat. So one of the things to remember is, and really it's a shame in the Presbyterian church or the mainline church. There are, what, 300,000 churches in the United States. Okay. Probably 100,000 of them are trying to do basically an AV presentation every week. Okay. And all right. There are only 20,000 live music venues in the United States, like bars and nightclubs with bands, with live music. So only 20,000 live music venues. Okay. Sure, every major AV equipment vendor has a church division because we are the biggest market for AV equipment in the country. All right. So every vendor has a church division. The Church Sound and Media Techs group on Facebook. So I'll just put this in. The Church Sound and Media Techs group on Facebook has 100,000 members. All right. Okay. And I go there a lot of times. Now, I will warn you about the Church Sound and Media Techs group. You ever hear the saying, there's no such thing as a stupid question? This is not true in that group. All right. All right. If you are about to ask a newbie question, you must preface it with an apology. I'm so sorry for asking this question. I don't mean to bother you, but really, please don't bust my chops about this question. But there's a lot of good advice there if you need very specific advice. So if you sat there and said, "Hey, I can't get my camera's mounted to a wall, and every time someone opens the door on that wall, my camera shakes. What are you doing to minimize vibration?" That kind of thing. But understand how high the level is in the rest of the church world on this stuff. Okay. I'm a noob, all right, in that world. All right. I'm not an expert in that world. I go to that world to increase my expertise. Okay. I'll be going back to Chicago at the beginning of May with two of my AV crew to a conference called Philo. And so it's at Willow Creek. And Philo, put that in the chat. Philo stands for first in, last out, because that's what the AV crew is, and they're first in. Terry, you're going to be at Philo. Awesome. I will catch up with you there. Let's make sure we catch up because I will be there with two of my AV crew. Okay. So that's going to be awesome. All right. So that's fantastic. And again, you'll have a couple thousand people traveling in there, and it's the most amazing stuff that they're doing. I mean, just absolutely amazing things that they're doing and learning about. Okay. So there's a ton of information, but search YouTube videos for basics. All right. Budget Church live streaming is really good for equipment reviews. Church sound and media text. Just read the group, read the questions, see what people are worried about. Uh, um, and if you have a specific question about a specific piece of equipment, that's a great place to ask it. But YouTube is your friend. You do know that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world.
Awesome. All right, I just want to say I added one more person to think about following. Pro Church Tools, Brady Shearer. He's a Canadian. He's an acquired taste on some level, but his stuff is great. And recommend you can subscribe to their email list, and then just sift through it. Like Rich is saying, not all of it applies, but the principles are good. And they do some tech stuff. His budgets are much higher than most of ours, like his projected budget, but there's a way to do this. The other thing I'll just say is a reminder that there are now a lot of knockoff products that you can get on Amazon that are just as good as the mainstream things. There's a couple spots where going to make sure you have strong products are important as well. Microphones is one of them. That's a spot where you want to make sure you're not skimping as well. But actually the tech problem that Rich helped us with, we bought $25 transmitter receiver pairs from Amazon, and I'm a little nervous about them, sort of, but they're working so far, and we're gonna leave them. And then that saved us $600. So.
Yeah, those Atlonas you replaced are really good, but yeah, but the cheapo ones we use from Amazon. The one thing that you often find is you can often get like this cheap, first of all, the cheap Chinese knockoffs are cheap Chinese knockoffs of products that are probably made in China anyway. So it's a cheap Chinese knockoff of a brand name Chinese product, half the time. And what I often do find is, yeah, sometimes it's a quarter of the price of the brand name unit. But then what I always do is I buy two, because where you're going to see the problem is in durability. All right. So durability is going to be the issue. And so I buy two. I mean, so right, instead of buying $100 item, if I can get a knockoff for 25 bucks, I'd rather pay 50 and have one on the shelf so that if it breaks, I remember the old Peanuts cartoons where Schroeder, every time Lucy broke a Beethoven bust, he went into the closet and just grabbed another Beethoven bust in the Peanuts cartoons. Sometimes you just gotta do that. So I'll stock up on the spares that way because they're really cheap. The other thing to watch out for in terms of your equipment, what kills equipment is heat. Heat buildup is the enemy of your equipment. So keeping your equipment so that for example, don't stack a bunch of boxes on top of each other because the heat will build up between the boxes. If you have a choice to spread them out flat on a table rather than stack them, spread them out flat and you'll get better heat dissipation and less heat buildup because heat is the enemy of your devices. All right. And if you do have to stack them, make sure you've put the rubber feet on them or whatever that just gives you a little bit of airflow between the boxes rather than putting it metal on metal on metal in a stack. Again, the heat will build up, and heat is what destroys your electronic components. So keep the heat buildup from happening, and the stuff will last a lot longer.
All right, friends. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Rich, thank you so much for your sharing and your leadership today. I hope you all did write down Rich's email. It's rich@englewoodpres.org. And you can hit me up for that too if you missed it. And Rich is really willing to help you as well. Also, I will tell you, when we had this particular tech problem, I posted that I was referring to. I posted on a Park Ridge virtual chatter, one of our neighborhood groups, and I said, "Who's out there that they think could help me?" And this wonderful lady said, "I think my son could help you." And I was like, "I think this is a dead end." because mom is going to volunteer her son. Uh, Turns out there is a 19-year-old young man who lives blocks from my church who is now our contract AV tech person when we need help during the week. And you can't have Toby, but he's only charging us $35 an hour, which is dirt cheap. Um, but he is, I like to think of him as the next Tony Stark. That's another story for another time. Um, but they're out there. And it's a great way to engage next generation leaders too, as well. All right, well, that's just a plug for some tips and tactics of how to get this done on a budget too, as well. And Yeah, all right, well, let us know if there's anything anybody can do to help you. Again, thank you, Rich. And there's a lot more to say on any of these things, but we're excited to journey with you. Like I said, hopefully you can join us for the conference in the fall, October 5th through the 7th. It's going to be a great time. And then our next webinar is coming up on March 12th, and that's going to be just 2 weeks away. And we're looking at pastoral leadership structures for everyone, and how to specifically lead in times of transition, with some new models that people are piloting around the country. And so this is going to take into consideration the fact that installed pastors are becoming less options for a lot of people. CREs, commission ruling elders, very important resource as well, and going to take into consideration context, knowing that what works in the urban and suburban context doesn't work in rural and frontier, and that's a piece of this as well. So, anyways, just hope you'll come to that. And one of our friends who was with us for part of the call, Brian Stamper, is actually going to be one of the lead presenters on that. PCGN is open to all church leaders in the PCUSA. And Barbara's inviting you to come to Missouri Union. So if you're looking for a new call, get in touch. And we There's the Facebook group and the email list, and encourage you to invite people to join this journey. We just cracked 900 members on the Facebook group, and there's more people out there who are trying to help their churches grow in faith and numbers. And we hope we can encourage you along the way. All right, friends. Well, take care. Have a good, blessed rest of your Wednesday. Godspeed with Lent as we go along.